Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. My last video, as you know, was a review of the Halford's 150 up to 150% brighter halogen bulbs, which went back. They were brighter, but they just weren't up to 150. Well, I suppose they were up to, technically. They certainly were not 150% brighter. They weren't worth the outlay for the same money. Delivered the very next day. I have this rather wonderful HID kit. That's a nice reflection. All the way from China. So we are going to install that today. A couple of things before we start. This particular kit has very good reviews on the said e-commerce site. It's got 1,400 or so reviews, 4.8 stars or whatever. Everyone says it's great. People do comment on the quality of the instructions, and they are correct. They're obviously translated from Chinese. Well, you know what, they did a better job of it than I would translating to Cantonese, so there's no issues with the translation. You can kind of work out what it says. But this circuit diagram, bear in mind I used to be a qualified development engineer on Airbus and Boeing. I have drawn my own circuit diagrams for these aeroplanes. I can't make head nor tail of that. It's utter nonsense. Complete rubbish. So we'll ignore it. To be fair, the way the kit's put together is very straightforward and it's self-explanatory in very many respects. So, halogen v HID. The original bulbs, halogen, how do they produce their light? That little filament in there has electricity passed through it and it becomes very, very hot. It glows white hot, that produces the light. It's a halogen bulb called halogen because it's filled with a halogen gas, and that gas has the effect of prolonging the life of that little bit of wire when it gets very hot. Purely resistive, generates heat, which generates light. The xenon HID system, here it is, high intensity discharge, is a completely different way of making light. It's actually a much, much older technology. Discharge or arc lamps were sort of the very first things that people came up with a long time ago. They burnt out very quickly. This one doesn't, because of the fact it's filled with a xenon gas, or the xenon gas certainly helps. It strikes an arc between the two electrodes, and that's where the xenon comes in at the beginning to start that arc. Once the arc is lit, they call it striking, then it produces a plasma of gas between the two electrodes, and that's what produces the light. Obviously that gets very hot as well, but it's a plasma rather than a resistive heating. So this is entirely 12 volts. You stick 12 volts in it, it gets hot, light comes out. This is not. To strike the arc you need in the region of 20,000 volts or so. The average car's electric system is 12 volts, hence the halogen is an easy fit. Because this starts on 20,000 volts and then is ramped down to somewhere between 80 and 100 volts to keep that arc burning, you have a few extra bits of kit. This is the most important bit. This is the ballast unit, and this is the thing that produces and maintains the high voltage. It's quite clever actually, because it strikes the 20,000 volts. In fact, there we go, look. V start 23 kV max, so up to 23 kilovolts. It then looks at the resistance of the bulb as the bulb warms up, because xenon discharge bulbs don't start at their full brightness, they have to warm up for a few seconds. So this will then track the resistance and it will scale down that huge voltage down to about 80 to 100 volts and monitor. Little microprocessor in there, and it looks at it, you know, however many millions of times a second, and adapts or changes the output voltage accordingly. A couple of other bits and pieces. We have the CAN bus decoder, because my car, like just about every other car in the last 10 to 15 years, has a CAN bus digital electronic bus that monitors your headlight performance. This does not look like a headlight bulb to the computer. So with just this, the computer in your car is going to flag up various faults. This CAN bus decoder, they call it decoder, it's basically a resistor and a capacitor, but what it does is it fools your car into thinking that this is a headlight. Clearly it isn't, but it makes the car think it is. The other little box here, max 23 kV, this is the striker unit. So this is the power supply and controller. It doesn't produce the 23 kilovolts, it produces up to 100 volts with a little inverter in there. To strike the arc initially, it sends a little signal down to this, and in this box will be a bunch of capacitors, and they'll just discharge very quickly like an ignition system to strike the initial arc. So good, boring, boring, boring. Let's see what it looks like. Right, here is the setup. There is your ballast and controller. There's your CAN bus decoder. There's the striker unit. There's the bulb itself, connected to my normal power supply. I've not tried this yet. This is the first time that I have turned it on. So we'll see what happens. You may see the bulb strike, or it may just come on and then it will increase in its intensity over the next few seconds. I have no idea whether the phone camera is going to be able to capture that. It may, you know, auto correct so it just looks the same, but it should strike and then become brighter. So here we go. That's good, isn't it? Nothing happened. Oh well, we'll turn it off and reverse the connections. Try again, hang on. Okay, I've reversed the polarity. It doesn't tell you which way to go, so let's see what happens. Try again. There we go, so it struck and then increased intensity. In fact, it's getting brighter as we watch. That's quite bright. I suppose you can really tell from the camera, but that is that's fairly intense, to be honest. Cool, right, let's put it in the car, see what happens. Oh, just a couple of things. This is made of aluminium, which is good for heatsink properties. It does need to be bolted to the side of the car, hence the the lugs there. These plastic things have no fixing, so they're going to be cable tied or taped, or I don't know. Now, with the kit, you get some brackets and some cable ties and bolts and stuff. The instructions, again, make absolutely no mention whatsoever of these brackets and bolts, so I don't know what they're for. No idea. We'll try and work it out. Just discovered a nice little thing about this kit, which may not apply to every car, but it certainly does to mine. Very quickly, note on installation, what they want you to do is plug these two wires here, the black and the blue, into this socket here. This socket goes onto the back of the existing halogen. It goes in there like that. Chink. Excuse my hand. Then these fly leads run off to this plug, which plugs into the ballast. Now, by happy coincidence, or probably not so much, this connector here is the male equivalent to this connector here, which goes into the car's original wiring loom. So that's nice, because instead of using these two spade connectors and a little short length of wire and another plug, we can go straight into the existing loom without that. So as you can see, it mates with the existing socket, so that's great. It saves me a bit of additional wire and a couple of additional connections, which is always good for reliability. So that's it. I have just chucked the bits in and I've tried it and it all works and there's no CAN bus errors, so that's cool. Need to screw it in now, really. So a minor bad thing has occurred. Minor, but not the end of the world. I've decided these brackets are probably fixing brackets, because I don't know what else they could be for. The problem is, as you can see, the lug on the end of the ballast is actually lower than the case of the ballast. I've got a bit of a bend on the bracket there. That's not too much of a problem. The other one I tried bolting directly to the car's bodywork because there was a convenient hole there. This nice little bracket is of course very thin and very flexible, so it took up any of that gap. On the other one, flipping lug broke off because the car bodywork is not as yielding. So I'm down a lug. Ugh, whatever. Not the end of the world. As long as they work, I'll cope. Well, they are on. They definitely work. They're quite bright, but I won't know how bright until we go for a drive later on. I'll see if I can get some footage of that. Last time was pretty unsuccessful. The phone fell out of its holder and it was very bumpy. And anyway, we'll see what we can do. So anyway, as on. There is the ballast and controller. There's your CAN bus module, striker there. Broken flipping lug on the end of that, look. Disappointing. Hence the cable tie. Most good car modifications are held in with cable ties. There's little brackets. The other one, the other side, we've got lots of space on this side, so it's nice and easy. This side we've got an airbox in the way. So just hung it from the bracket down there behind the headlight. So appears to be working. Very bright in here. So we'll go for a drive later on and we'll see how it works. It was nice to have that, we could use this plug without using the little extension loom. So that was a nice thing, a nice bit of the kit. In terms of the kit, so that's a good thing to have, that original equipment plug and socket. That's quite nice. The lug that broke off the casting, that's not very nice. It's an Amazon kit from China. As long as they work, we'll cope with it. So let's see how we get on. I think that is a massive improvement. I've still got lots of light down in front of the car like I did with the Halfords halogens. Here comes a dark bit. Hurrah for the dark bit. Let's have a look. Oh yes. Lots of light right in front of the car, and it throws the light further than it did previously as well. I have actually adjusted my headlight angle down slightly. I was a bit worried about blinding oncoming drivers and getting in trouble with the law. So they could even come up slightly. That right-hand one could possibly come up a little bit, but you know what? That is such a massive improvement. I am very, very happy with that. So my wife is finishing icing a really terrible Christmas gingerbread house that we've made. Oh my god, it's awful. And the cups are there supporting the roof. Don't ask why. Anyway, HID headlights. They're really good. I'm really impressed with them. I don't know if you saw the other video. For those of you that haven't, we just talked very briefly about the legality of retrofitting HID headlights to your car. Mine has projector headlamps and self-leveling suspension, which I think makes it just about legal, particularly because BMW had the xenon HID as an option on my car, so those projector headlights are designed to be fitted with those bulbs. Again, if you have reflector headlights and if you do not have self-leveling suspension or self-leveling headlights, you will definitely fail your MOT. In terms of performance then, they're absolutely brilliant. The light output is much more intense, and the beam pattern is much better as well. It's a much more even spread of light. So yeah, good. I will be keeping them. Let's have a look at what she's doing. What's she doing now?